Hello, I don't know why I'm nervous, but today I wanted to talk about how I discovered that I am a gay man because this is something that I didn't really realize about myself until I was 22 in college. Funnily enough, it seemed like everybody except for me knew much earlier than I did. I remember when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, people were calling me gay, and I truly did not know that I was gay until I was about 22. And I wanted to talk about that because that's really odd, right? Something that's so obvious to everyone, but you are deluding yourself. I don't even think I was deluding myself. I think it was total ignorance. Ignorance about myself, but also ignorance about the whole concept of gay, because growing up, I never knew a single gay person. I think what really was happening was I felt a lot of external pressure from my parents, my family, my society, my peers to be straight, and also just lack of representation of gay people and lack of really knowing what that is, kind of making me believe that I must be straight because I don't know of anything else. And everyone else, there's all this like pressure from, I don't know, movies, TV, your peers, everybody to be heterosexual because everywhere you look, heterosexuality is being represented. So it felt like, if I wasn't heterosexual, that would be a bad thing and I would be outcasted. Mississippi's culture is it's extremely conservative, probably the most conservative state in the whole United States. I don't think I'm being over dramatic when I say that at times I feared for my life because people saw me as gay and I was often a target for bullying, and I tried to keep a low profile and fly under the radar as much as I could. I think that's part of the reason why I grew up so shy and so distant from everyone. I grew up without any friends. I think a part of that was because I just never interacted with anyone because I felt so unsafe, and I felt like I would just be rejected by everyone because they would think I was gay. And I don't know, I also never fit into that culture that I grew up in either, the Mississippi culture. It just had a lot of things going on with it that I didn't like. It felt very misogynistic, racist, obviously homophobic. And I just never appreciated the culture I grew up in. And I felt like a lot of my peers kind of drank the Kool-Aid of that culture and very much inherited those cultural values. So I felt like I didn't fit in with any of them. And I didn't want to either. Like I didn't even like them at all. And I never really met anyone who was kind of, I don't know, open-minded, not racist, not homophobic, etc., not extremely religious. I mean, pretty much everyone I knew growing up was extremely religious and extremely conservative. So, I was just growing up in a society where I felt deeply unsafe and extremely outcasted and different from everyone else. So I think that's a huge reason why I never kind of allowed myself to even think about my sexual orientation, because it never felt like I ever could in terms of safety. Growing up, I never knew a single gay person, maybe Ellen DeGeneres on TV, but in my life, I never knew a single gay person for my entire, childhood, teenage years, not until college. So I didn't even really know what it was. And also, I don't know, it just seemed like something that was really rare, and surely that is so rare that would never happen to me, of course, obviously, because we just always assume that we're normal, whatever that means. It took me a long time to kind of make sense of the thoughts and the feelings that I was having. I didn't immediately associate them with being gay, and I grew up in a really sheltered and conservative part of the country, so gay was something that I had not really even heard of, and I had never even met a gay person, and I certainly didn't know any gay people in my personal life, and I didn't obviously have any friends or family who were LGBT. So I just didn't really realize that was a thing that a person could be. It was so rare, it seemed like. So unheard of that it didn't even cross my mind that was what I was. But I could tell that I was not normal from a very early age, like 5 years old, or maybe even younger. I could tell I was different because there was a lot of social pressure, even at that very young age, to have an interest in girls And I just remember not giving a fuck at all about girls. No interest whatsoever. Like, they were fun to talk to, but there was all this pressure to like have feelings for them that I just couldn't relate to. And obviously I was very young, but even as my age progressed and I got into my preteens and then my teens, the feelings for girls, they just never developed. I do remember having crushes on my female classmates, and in retrospect, looking back, I almost feel like those crushes might have been my own brain playing tricks on me, because I had been so brainwashed into believing that, everybody's straight and I must also be straight, and, I'm supposed to be attracted to girls. And during that time, like, sex drive is like really amping up and hormones are going crazy. And I feel like all of this societal brainwashing of heteronormativity is the reason I had those crushes. But looking back, if I had met those people in my life now, I would never be interested in them. I feel like it was mostly just kind of brainwashing manifesting itself as crushes that I never wanted to act on those crushes, though. I just kind of wanted to stay at a distance because it always felt like scary to some extent. Like, I knew there was something off about it, but I didn't know what it was. But let me talk about, when did I first start noticing that I was attracted to men? I think the earliest memory I have of being attracted to men was when I was about 6 years old or something like that. I had gone to like this summer camp called Summer Fun Camp, which was anything but fun. It was very torturous. But anyway, that's a different story. But there was this guy there who told me about this website where you could create your own Pokemon cards. And I was really big into Pokemon at the time. So when I went home, I tried to go to that website. And long story short, I saw content that children should not be seeing. And that was kind of my first experience being attracted to men. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but you can probably figure out what I'm talking about, right? Like, that was the first time I realized, wow, looking at this content is highly appealing to me. And there was also content of women, and it did not appeal to me at all. And I was like 6 years old, so this was very young. Like, what, it was so night and day. Like, when I look at the men, I feel just, this is the best thing ever. And when I look at the women, I'm like, this is kind of gross. I don't like this. You know what I mean? I mean, it was so stark from such a young age. I remember growing up, I never had any crushes on guys, never had any crushes on my classmates, aside from like 2 or 3 female classmates, but never on any of the male classmates. I don't really remember having much sexual fantasies either. Like, I feel like that part of me was kind of just shut off. Probably my subconscious was protecting me because it knew I was in such an unsafe environment that I wasn't even able to explore that side of me until I was able to escape. And thankfully, when I was 18, I was able to escape and go, as far away from Mississippi as I could at the time. And I finally felt, like it was not 100% a safe space, but the best I had ever had at the time. But yeah, college was a huge step up from Mississippi. I went to college at the University of Florida, and that was really nice because I felt like the campus there, or like the student body culture, was way more open-minded than, the culture I grew up in, certainly. And so it felt sort of like a safe place to explore my sexual orientation. Then, when I was in college, I was on Tinder. By that point, I kind of knew that I was attracted to guys, but I thought I was bisexual because I had been attracted to women also, but not sexually. But I didn't quite understand that difference at the time because I was still a virgin and I didn't quite know what I liked because I had never done anything. And it was all just hypothetical and in my imagination. So I had thought I was bi at the time. I met this guy through Tinder who was openly gay. This was like the first openly gay person I had ever met in my life. I was probably 20 at the time. Long story short, he helped me realize that I was gay. Won't go into detail about that, but yep. He helped me realize that I like being with guys. And, after a couple of years of spending time with him, I felt very, very clear in my mind that I had no interest in women at all anymore, and that I could happily just be with men for the rest of my life, and I had no interest to ever even explore being with a woman ever. And so that kind of helped me realize that I was totally okay with identifying with gay from that point forward. And then I told my parents, like almost immediately afterwards. And by that point, I was already like 22 years old, and I was already moved out of their house. So I didn't feel, too afraid to come out to them, because I knew if they rejected me or anything or never wanted to talk to me again, I was already pretty independent at that point. So I didn't really need that acceptance from them. Although, of course, I desperately wanted it. I didn't want to lose my parents and be like disowned and abandoned by them, like many people are. So I got very lucky that they were, mostly non-responsive, is really how I would describe their response. I texted my mom and I told her I wasn't very close with her or my dad, so I didn't want to tell them in person, and I didn't, especially since they lived thousands of miles away at that point, so there was really no telling them in person. And then I didn't really want to call her either, because I didn't want to get all emotional, and I didn't want her to get emotional either. And yeah, I just don't like anything having to do with emotions, and I wanted to avoid that completely. So that's why I just texted her, and then, she could just read it, or pretend she never saw it, or whatever she wanted to do. You know what I mean? So yeah, and you can call me a coward for coming out that way, but I'm really glad that I did come out that way, because it avoided an uncomfortable conversation that I didn't want to have, and it communicated everything that I needed to communicate in a way that avoided, emotional outbursts or anything that I wanted to avoid. So I don't regret coming out that way. I would do it again. I am totally fine with that, and I don't think it's cowardly, really. I really don't, especially if you don't have a close relationship with someone. Like, I did not have a close relationship with my parents, so it just didn't feel right to call them, because I didn't even want to talk to them, to be honest. So, but I wanted them to know, just because I wanted to give them that opportunity to accept me in a way they have never accepted me before. So that gave them a chance to do that. And so that's why I wanted to come out to them. Long story short, I essentially just, I always kind of had attraction to guys, and I simply, explored that more when I finally felt safe when I was in college. And then after exploring it, I felt comfortable identifying with that label and being openly gay. Hopefully that was helpful, or at least interesting to somebody. I'll catch you in my next video. Goodbye.